Rupa, for this welcome address. And I would like to mention that our Vice President, Mr. K.R. Shekhar, couldn't make it today morning because of some bereavement. I think he lost his elder brother, and so we are not having him with us, and he has sent a note. So we will proceed with the speakers for the day, Mr. Anand Merathia and Mr. Vijay Iyer, who are basically the Anant is Mr. Anant is a senior lawyer, and he hails from Chennai, and he. Uh, I'm sorry, I don't have the profile because Prithvi was supposed to introduce. Uh, He's the managing partner of Anant Merathia and Associates, and he has over 20 years of legal expertise, and he has also been an arbitrator and practiced in Singapore, and now he is with us to share his experience on the legal side, NCLT and IBC vis-a-vis the MSME perspective. And we also have Mr. Vijay Iyer, who is partner Deloitte Touche and Tomatsu India Private LLP, and he is based out of Mumbai, and he himself is an independent uh, uh, insolvency professional, and he has handled several companies as a IPR, so we could get the best practical experience from him. So now with this prelude, I would like to uh, tell why this seminar is all about and what are we going to cover in this seminar. Basically, the webinar is intended to see that what the MSMEs are going to do once the door for IBC is now been kind of closed for them for any redressal, those claims which have come in during the March 2020, and there have been some notifications and amendments which have come in the backdrop of MSME by IBCs, and we are going to in detail discuss about the entire pros and cons, what could be the repercussion on this, and what are the uh, specific courses available for MSME to redress their matters. And we have uh, Anand, who will be covering the entire gambit of the MSME IBC provisions, and he is going to give you a overview of complete IBC, the overall mechanism and objective plus performance, conventional challenges being faced by MSMEs in the context of being promoter driven and obtaining finances. Categorization under MSMEs, there have been a lot of changes now. So those criteria and the numbers, the turnover and thresholds, all those things he will be covering, and specific provisions under IBC, especially analysis of section 240A and 29A, mainly which deals with today's context, and with some case studies. Mr. Anand is going to elaborate on the topic, and also is going to let us know what are the alternative courses available for MSMEs for making their claims. On to you, Mr. Anand. Uh, this floor is open to you. You may run the PPT and explain the whole thing. Rupa, you're there. You have already got the presentation?
Yes, sir, I have.
Okay. On to you, Anand. I welcome you. Please take it.
Sincere thanks, sir. Thanks for that setting the context and the introduction as well. Sincere thanks to the chamber, the Bangalore chamber, for having us on board for this webinar. I'm sure in this whole lockdown of about almost, which is running into its third month, you all would have attended quite a few webinars. And as in the lighter side, the joke is that there are so many webinars, there's so much of knowledge, but how to practically implement and when will the market and business open up for us to put that on the ground is something which people are already speaking about. So it was a good initiative from the chamber that they made it very specific to the MSME sector and in the context of what the challenges the mid-size and small-size businesses are going to face, both from the perspective if you are a creditor or as a company per se. So I really appreciate that aspect, that this is a more focused webinar on the perspective of how the whole game of IBC has been so far and is likely to be going forward, as vis-a-vis the MSMEs. So with that background, could I request Ms. Rupa to share the presentation screen? I made a presentation. I hope that would be helpful. And Om sir, I'm presuming the chamber would be sharing this with the attendees of the. Is that the?
Yeah. We will share it. We will share.
Yeah. So yeah. While I will try to restrict myself to some time frame that I have been provided with. There are some aspects in the presentation while Ms. Rupa loads the presentation, just to give you a sense that there are some aspects which may be a bit more detailed, and I will just run through those in a relatively quicker manner where I feel that which can also be later made use of. The idea is that the eventual I mean as listeners, you'll have this as a ready reckoner or as a presentation which you all can use going forward as well. So yes, Ms. Rupa, can we have the next slide? We straight dive into the subject. The next slide, ma'am. So friends, the challenges with respect to, I'll straight get into the subject at this point in time as to what are the challenges that an MSME faces. Firstly, MSMEs are relatively unorganized, very promoter driven. There are challenges with respect to governance. Sometimes we see the turnover, the size of the company is fairly big sized companies, but then still there are challenges with respect to organizational structure and so on and so forth. When I say bandwidth challenges, this is with respect to, for example, you may not have an in-house legal counsel or an in-house CFO/company secretary, and so on and so forth. Lack of funds has been a conventional issue, but then the lack of funds was a problem till maybe not so much of a problem till the last 3-4 years, until when the whole NPA issue mounted up, IBC came, financial disciplines changed, banks became a lot more stringent and serious about lending money. So yes, funding is a challenge that MSME faces. As an operational creditor, MSMEs did not have any bargaining power, at least prior to IBC. And going forward, again, that similar issue is going to be there. In agree during IBC, to some extent that was taken care of. But yes, if you're a supplier to a big company and the big company is not paying you, you have challenges there. And that leads to the next point, which is basically the companies suffer issues such as bad debts. For that matter, this is generic to any business, but MSME specifically, bad debts or slow recoveries is a huge challenge because you have your commitments to the banks. And MSME as an operational creditor, the word OC means operational creditor, which is basically a creditor who supplies goods or services under IBC. They are placed in a very lower threshold on the waterfall mechanism, which means the mechanism where the distribution of monies are there or assets are there, either in the case of a resolution of a company which suffers insolvency or goes under liquidation. So in either scenario, you are not in a very great position. You are paid after the secured creditors, after the unsecured financial creditors, and several other stakeholders. Not that this was any better off in the earlier regimes of winding up, or rather for that matter, any other regime. But then yes, that's another challenge that you would face as a operational creditor when this MSME becomes or plays the role of an operational creditor or supplies goods or services. While there is a lot of discussion on the suspension ordinance, according to me, the big hit for MSMEs is going to be the change of threshold from 1 lakh to 1 crore. While we will be discussing this in a bit more detail later, but I personally see this as a challenge for MSMEs to approach the NCLT going forward with this minimum amount, which had to be a lakh of rupees of default. You could go to the IBI, you could go to the NCLT, which is today 1 crore of rupees. Yes, ma'am. Next slide, please. So there has been a reclassification of MSMEs, which was recently announced as part of the economic package and COVID scheme, which will be effective from 1st of July. While the numbers are all there, my major concern here is twofold. One, they have introduced a twin condition of investment and turnover, which according to me, in spite of the government speaking so much of pro MSME, and MSME seems to have become the favorite word of the government, the twin conditions will eliminate many companies to take the benefits of the MSME and the relevant and the related the packages that are being announced. And the second aspect is, as has been seen in the last few years, whether there's going to be a proper implementation of this entire 20 lakh crore package or Atmanirbhar Bharat package scheme in the context of MSMEs. There are multiple announcements made, a lot of relatively faster loans and things of that nature, but how will it be implemented is a challenge. But reclassification is something that you will need to look into, because going forward, when you are the promoter of an MSME, are trying to bid for your own company or trying to save the company, this may be a challenge. Yes, ma'am. Next slide, please. So next is the context of IBC per se. While my presumption is a large part of the audience might have a fair sense of what IBC already is, and therefore I won't go into too much of detail, but at least to put to a basic context of why IBC came in. Well, there is an entire report to it, and there has been a lot of study done at academic level, industry level. From a very practical industry perspective, uh, reviving companies which are in a bad financial condition, stressed financial condition, it was important that something had to come in and help them. There was the BIFR in Delhi, which was pretty, as we all know, wasn't very helpful. It wasn't really working out well. So there was a need of consolidating various laws such as winding up laws, BIFR, SARFAESI, so on and so forth, bring everything together and have it in one consolidated concept. That's the reason it's called the code. It's not called an act. If you see it from a very legal typical angle, it's a more comprehensive one. Creditor versus debtor balance. The saying earlier was that, you know, the creditor was nowhere close. No, I mean, the creditor was always at the mercy of the debtor, whether the creditor is a banker or the creditor is a trader or an operational creditor. So that balance had to be struck somewhere, and therefore this was another major objective, which why this law had come in. I will skip the third one, file maximization of assets. Definitely yes, because earlier winding up regimes used to take a lot of time, 10, 15, 20 years to come up with a liquidation, proper liquidation. Most importantly, a time-bound mechanism. We've always had these instances, or we've heard that in India, any legal process, you call the moment you call it the word legal, it means that the process is going to take years together, 5 years, 10 years, 15 years. So it had to be time-bound. And then you have, as thanks to IBC, a complete new ecosystem evolved, such as the new courts which were listening to IBC matters, such as the NCLT. Insolvency professionals were a new set of professionals that were brought in. There was a regulator called the IBBI that came in. On somewhere on the right side of the screen, you will see also people who were eligible to file cases, who are primarily in three categories: financial creditors, the bankers, NBFCs, individual financial creditors, operational creditors who supplied goods or services, and the companies themselves. So this, if I may say, this is a very basic fundamental uh, uh, foundation as why IBC came in. It was to help primarily the bankers, because NPA was becoming a mounting huge issue of 8 or 9 lakh crores was the figures that came out in 2016-17 when the law was introduced, that we need to resolve this. And the initial set of cases came in, which were about 12 odd cases, which itself had maybe over a lakh or couple of lakh crores which had to be resolved. So yes, this was the challenge, and in this background, IBC was brought into place. Yes, ma'am. The next slide, please. So IBC has helped India come a long way in terms of, or rather quickly, in terms of the ease of doing business, from an average position of 130, which it was in 2015-16, to today we are on 63 overall. And in the specific resolving insolvency index, we have almost jumped with 100% betterment from 100, and in fact it was 108. If you see on the left side of the screen, there is this steady climb, and then you see the good. Under the good, the third index, which is resolving insolvency, we are at number 52, which is a lot more better than several other countries. In fact, from a practical perspective, 3 to 4 years of the law being in force and coming in growing at such a decent level should be something which should be appreciated. While it's very easy to criticize something and say, no, this is not working well, this is useless, this is not doing good, I think one has to also see the positive side of things. On the right side, you see some statistics, the latest statistics released by the IBBI, which is the regulator of this whole IBC law. To put it, to sum up in sum and substance, from a purely, again, a very businessman or a layman perspective, around 4,000 cases, 3,800 cases approximately, have been admitted into insolvency, out of which the important numbers, you see the fourth row, which is closed by resolution, and the next row closed by liquidation. The earlier ones are settlements, or 12A is also a settlement. If you see, 221 companies have found resolutions, which are very 914 companies have gone into liquidation, which is a ratio of more than 1:4. Now, this is a matter of concern. For every one company that finds a resolution, you have 4 companies which are being liquidated. So that's something which is a definite concern that's coming in. That's always been there from the performance of IBC itself per se. And secondly, the time period, as you see, most of the cases, rather a lot of cases have crossed the 270-day time period given in IBC. You see about 700 plus cases. Again, there's a lot of criticism that happens that the law is not performing well, it's slow, and so on and so forth. Now, again, we need to appreciate that in the earlier, what was the earlier equivalent law, or the best nearest law, which was winding up? In winding up, to even get a provisional liquidator and an official liquidator appointed, you used to take years. And then if the liquidator was appointed for liquidation, that was another maybe a decade. So when we are moving from decades, or at least 5 to 10 years, into probably days, and even if it is in reality 1 to 2 years or 2 to 3 years for a resolution, we are way better off than what we were prior to this introduction of this law. So yes ma'am, next. So there's some more statistics that's continued. I won't again delve detail into this. This is a little slightly it wasn't basically as of September 2019, based on one of the reports of EY, one of the big 4 audit firms in the country. And the main thing that you see there is, even at that point in time, the resolution to liquidation ratio was 1:4. For about 156 resolution plans passed, there were about almost 600 liquidations. And if you see on the right side, the number of operation creditors, which is people like such as MSMEs, or could be even smaller entities which probably fall below MSME, or any or outside that, it was the operational creditors who had filed a large number of cases, almost 50% of the cases in IBC. Yes, ma'am. The next slide, please. I'll skip again this slide. We've covered a large part of it. The important thing is, if you see, one important aspect is that almost 4 lakh crores has been settled off between parties even prior to admission of the companies into insolvency. You'll see this in the left side. When you see the graph below that, you see above 9,000 cases. So in about 9 to 10,000 cases, 4 lakh crores getting settled is something unusual, unprecedented, and at least India has not seen something like this, be it your SARFAESI regime, your suits regime, whatever it is. So definitely, and this is prior to the company even getting admitted into insolvency, because it's also a stigma. Promoters do not want to lose out their companies, and this is not an exaggerated number, for the reason being that on the ground we are seeing a lot of cases getting settled, starting from prior to the, of course, amendment, starting from 10 lakh, 15 lakh value cases, even up to 500 crores, 700, 800 crores cases are being settled. The amount cannot be given overnight, obviously, especially if it's a large amount, it's given in a staggered period, but settlements were working out well. Yeah, ma'am, the next slide, please. And this number was also endorsed by the government a couple of times. So yeah, I think this just gives you an overall perspective. Later on, the presentation is there with you. You can see as on September, or as on September 2019, where the maximum number of cases were filed. As always, I think the 4 metros are leading, and there's a decent number of cases even in Bangalore, which have been filed under IBC and admitted. Yes, ma'am. The next. Now, coming to the ordinance, which is the topic of discussion today, most importantly, or which has become if you read any paper as far as IBC is concerned, everyone's talking about the impact of the most recent ordinance of suspending IBC 7, 9, and 10. Before talking about that, as I had already indicated earlier, the bigger concern is the increase of threshold to 1 crore of rupees. Now, this is a very debatable subject. I may have a view, somebody else may have a different view. It's a very subjective view. Now, the government, in both the ordinances prior to that, the press notes that came out, the press releases, the minister was speaking, they said that the idea is to protect MSMEs and see in the best interest of MSMEs. So when we talk about the threshold increase from 1 lakh to 1 crore, MSMEs is it really helping MSMEs, or is it going to it's counterproductive, or it seems to be backfiring? Because MSMEs are not the ones who actually owe an amount of 1 crore or more to the their suppliers. Some of them might be, but many of them don't. It is the MSME which has to recover amount of less than a crore. Is basically MSME which has to recover an amount which is less than a crore, maybe 30 lakhs, 50 lakhs, 70 lakhs, or even for that matter 90 lakhs from a bigger company. So it will become easier for bigger customers to delay payments further going forward as per the new ordinance, as per this new threshold. And IBC will not come to their rescue. While again, the big debate is IBC a recovery law? No, the NCLAT, the courts have been constantly saying it's not a recovery law. Please use it only for resolution. But let's be honest to ourselves. IBC has been the most effective recovery law also, and a lot of companies file, rather most of the cases are filed with the objective of recovery. Again, I mean, keeping aside the cases which are filed by the banks with big debts of 10, 5,000 crore, 3,000 or 7,000 crores where they know it can't be settled, but operational creditor cases are filed with the intent that hopefully the case, the debtor will come and settle the matter. So it has been used as a recovery law, and we cannot shy away from that fact. So it has been an effective one, and it has worked. Now going forward, if your amount is less than a crore, and even if it is a pre-COVID default, which means a default which occurred prior to 25th of March 2020, can you go to NCLT? Question mark. According to, again, my humble understanding is that one may not be able to go to NCLT because it's a prospective ordinance, which means the ordinance takes effect from the day of it being put into place, which is 24th of March. So MSMEs will have to probably look at alternatives, especially for amounts less than 1 crore of rupees. Now, the second ordinance which came out, which has been spoken a lot about, which is about the suspension of sections 7, 9, and 10. These are the three trigger sections where you trigger insolvency for 6 to 12 months. Personally, if one may ask, this may not be so much of a concern from a creditor angle. If you're an MSME and you're a creditor, because as it is, this is not the best time to litigate. This is actually not the time to go behind, go to courts, because even the judiciary is semi-functional. There are challenges the judiciary is facing because of the COVID situation. Most of the hearings have moved to online hearings. Limited hearings are happening. So any which ways, is going to take time for your case to reach some amount of some stage of, if I may say, productive finality or conclusiveness. There was a mention about that there will be a special MSME framework as per the finance minister's speech, which seems to be missing. So that's something which the government will have to look into, because though they've given as of now a protection for 6 to 12 months for post-COVID defaults, what about pre-COVID defaults? How will you defend yourself if you're an MSME? Pre-COVID default, somebody files against you for above 1 crore and straight away falls, is eligible in this category. How does an MSME defend itself? I think the government needs to think about that. Also, suspending section 10 at this point in time, where a company on its own can go and file for insolvency. That's something which is again a matter of debate, and the government needs to think, because see, you may have suspended section 10, which means people can't go against a MSME company which is owing money to people, or even to the banks. They probably, yes, 6 to 12 months immunity is there, but all these people are going to, especially the banks or any financial creditor, they are going to pursue all other legal remedies, SARFAESI, DRT, asset personal guarantors. So how do you protect them there? So it's not a blanket protection against by in all laws. It's only a protection in IBC. Whereas when you have a section 10 application admitted a moratorium on under IBC, you're protected from any recovery law. So that's something which needs to be addressed, and probably we'll take up all these discussions in the interactive session. There is an option of a fast track insolvency, which has limited scope, very limited. There are specific categories of companies such as small companies, startups, that can undergo fast track insolvency. But again, it hasn't been very prevalent and caught up yet in the country. Voluntary liquidation option is there. You can, because the cases which are, or the types of cases suspended, are only 7, 9, and 10. But there again, here is where you need to get your confidence of your creditors, your shareholders. You need to call for an EGM, and there's a whole process involved. In short, the difference between the section 10 is, if you are in default, you can go file for an insolvency, get a moratorium. Whereas in voluntary liquidation, you straight away move towards liquidation. And if your assets are lesser than your liabilities, it's very difficult to get through this process. So So this is more so for, if I may say, more so toward defunct companies. So that's the main change or the concerns or what these ordinances bring on the plate. Yes, ma'am. Next. How much time? Next slide, ma'am. Yeah, thanks. So here we have put some good business practices. If you as an MSME are either a creditor or if you're a debtor, you can have it as a thumb rule, keep irrespective whether it is at the present IBC suspended, even when IBC comes back into play. So let us first look at if you are a debtor and you are an MSME. You need to consider what are the stakes that are involved if your company is being put into insolvency. Assuming once the suspension is lifted, basically the management control completely goes into the hands of an COC, and there's an insolvency professional. You don't have control over your company, so on and so forth. So the stakes are something which you need to seriously look at. If there's a settlement possibility, I think settlement is a preferable option than the company going into insolvency. If there are genuine disputes, a lot of times we have seen, again, this takes me back to the if I may say, a more informal way of doing business that we have seen with on ground with MSMEs. A lot of times, if there are disputes, you have a running account for, and a large part of that amount that other your supplier says that you owe that supplier is in dispute because of some quality issue. You tend to not document it. So please document it and raise the dispute then and there. And if need be, resolve it timely. I mean, otherwise, saying that there's a dispute and there's a quality problem after he has approached NCLT would be a bit too late. Timely reconciliation, I think that's important, because accounts issues are always something which it's too belated to bring in these things for the first time in the NCLT. And when you make payments, ensure that, again, documentation, if I were to put it in one line, proper documentation is extremely important. And try and see if you can, if the bandwidth allows, choose your vendors carefully. Your vendors should not be people who have gone around filing left, right, and center IBC cases against their customers. Now, if you're a creditor, what is more important? You need to keep a check on who are your debtors, who are your clients who are not paying up, who are already in a financially distressed position. And once the suspension is lifted, do you think that they may go into insolvency? IBBI has a comprehensive list of companies which are into insolvency, so you can keep a track there. Here again, the challenge is going to be your bandwidth issues. You'll have to put somebody from your finance account side to take care of all these issues, and the next couple of suggestions which are there, which is timely documentation. If somebody owes you money, please do proper follow-ups, please do documentation, emails, letters, whatever it is. Ensure that from time to time there is some kind of an acknowledgement of the liability from your customer. If not, that leads to a lot of challenges on a practical level, be it IBC, be it any other court of law that we see. MSMEs, so focus is always on the business, totally agreed, and the necessary compliances. The usual complaint that we see, the GST itself is taking away all our time, other taxation issues is taking all our time, labor issues and all of that. Where on earth do we have time for looking into these aspects? So you'll have to see how you can spare some amount of time for some person from your company to at least keep a track on your large accounts. And if the company, if in spite of all this, if luck is not there and you may not have put somebody into insolvency, but if some company has gone into insolvency which owes you money, there is a process to be followed: filing your claim form, following up the insolvency process, seeing if your claim is admitted. And if it is not admitted or it is partially admitted, you have to take it up with the insolvency professional. So these are general thumb rules, more so from an IBC perspective, but you can also always use it as basic pointers for any other if you are to defend or if you are to approach any court of law going forward. Next slide, ma'am. I will end here, since now IBC in IBC pre-COVID defaults are allowed to be filed. So if you are filing a case, I'll only talk about the operational creditor angle. Please check if you are eligible to file the case. Check if the company is already admitted. If so, there's no point of you filing the case and going through the process, spending the entire fee and cost, because today every penny pinches. There's a time that we have all seen that 3 months there's no income. We all know what the common problems are: labor payments and all of that. So every penny is going to be a pinch. Think 4 times probably before you go ahead and take a call of going behind a company for insolvency, even if you're fully eligible. You don't have voting rights in the COC, and by and large the Supreme Court has said that the financial creditor has to get a better priority than the operational creditor, and an MSME will typically be an unsecured operational creditor. So please bear that point in mind. Yeah, next slide, ma'am. I'm not talking about corporate data and financial creditor, but yeah, you can just from the slide, you can have a look at the data because that may not be very specific. But in case if you have any group company which is also in the finance business, yes, that will be helpful. Your alternatives are commercial suits, which have been reasonably okay. I won't say that this has been magic and it has done very well. It has been way better than our old civil suits and those issues. See, this is a situation where your amount is less than 1 crore and you have no other option but to now litigate. You're reaching the stage where the person is even stopped taking your calls, not responding in any format whatsoever. Clear cut admitted liability or a decent case that you can make out. Commercial court is an option. Time bound, I will say not so much. That high courts are trying to push it as much as possible faster, but then pre-COVID it was 1 to 2, or if I may say 1 to 3 years on the ground. Post-COVID, you take and add another 6 months to an average 6 to 12 months for any average case, because the backlog of the last 3 months that has got accumulated in all courts is going to take another 3 to 6 months to ease out. And this is going to depend on city to city. Like Bombay is in a bad shape, Chennai is not doing too well, so where courts are slow and because of the COVID situation. Summary suits is best where you don't have any dispute and it's an admitted liability. So try and so that's a relatively faster remedy, because the moment we talk about suits, people think 5 years, 10 years, which is reality. So we're looking at alternatives which could be relatively better and time bound. Check bounce cases, yes, if you have checks, please go ahead. I know it doesn't show any it's very slow. The trial process is a very lengthy process and it takes its own sweet time for a long point in time. But when it reaches that stage where the company is forced to bring in its management, or somebody the summons are issued and so on and so forth, that's when people we've seen a lot of settlements happening. And by the way, you can have check bounce cases parallel to any of your civil remedies, be it IBC, be it commercial suits. The government is now proposing to decriminalize check bounces, which is a totally subject, a totally different subject, probably for another day. But if I were to put it in a line, decriminalizing check bounces is going to be a huge negative impact on the entire business fraternity, because the sanctity of security checks or checks per se is going to be affected because of that. Yes, ma'am. The next slide. The next slide, ma'am. Yeah. So the MSMED Act provides for a Samadhan portal, and where you can basically file your complaint. It's a very structured mechanism. The basic details are there before you. You're supposed to get the payments within 45 days. Companies, there are obligations on companies who take supplies from MSMEs to show what are the unpaid amounts to MSMEs, and try and see if you can look at that, because that helps a lot if you can pull out those. They're trying to make it as much as online filing, and that process is being made more user friendly. Time period is 90 days. On ground reality, it takes more time. They try to resolve the issue in an amicable conciliation. If not, it is an arbitration, and the award becomes a binding award, and it gives you the status of a secured creditor. So it is a reasonably effective mechanism. You can go to this website. Actually, people are using it. About 40,000 odd cases have been filed, and out of which 10-12,000 cases have been resolved, and quite a few, if I may say, I think a few hundred crores, or probably 1,000 crore plus, has already been resolved and settled and paid to MSMEs in this mechanism. Yes, ma'am. Thanks. Next one, ma'am. No, ma'am. I think that we skipped the we have come to 15, 14, the previous slide. Yeah. So the challenge for MSME as a business, as a debtor, while the ones that you are aware of, the business ones, I won't get into the first one or two, lack of bank and trust. You are a guarantor. You are the promoter, and your family, you and the promoter and the families are guarantors, and they face serious legal consequences in the case of insolvency and going forward, whatever regime that's coming in. You need to be really careful on that. Please think twice before signing personal guarantees or getting your family members as personal guarantors. Sometimes the promoters, especially in tier 2, tier 3 cities, are not aware of what the resolution process can do, or what the CIRP is actually, which will also be a minus point. Now, there was an introduction of a particular section 29 capital A, which barred promoters from coming in and bringing in resolution plans. According to what we have seen on the ground, it is typically the promoter who is the most interested or emotionally attached person to that particular business. So barring promoters is a challenge, and that there is a lack of people who are willing to be interested in a resolution of a company which is in insolvency process, especially in the MSME sector. Also, these companies are more technical and specialized business in nature, and therefore it's important to have the promoter eventually run the company at some point. The promoter is the one who has built the company. Yes, ma'am. Thanks. Next slide. So basically, the gist of this slide is, without getting too legal, there was an introduction of a particular section 29 capital A. The objective was to bar the promoter for coming up with a resolution plan and bidding for his or her own company, because people felt that this is the person who is responsible for the company becoming an NPA and going in the red, and such a person should not be given an opportunity to come back again and take the company. So there were several disqualifications brought in, but just my request is to probably, we have noted C, G, and H, 29 capital A, C, G, and H. C and H, next slide, ma'am. So this was leading to, once this came in, a lot of companies were going into liquidation, because other than the, no ma'am, previous slide, sorry, previous slide. So once this 29A capital A was brought in, a lot of companies are facing liquidation because promoter can't give a resolution plan, no third party is coming in, no expression of interest. What do you do? So relaxation was brought in the code, where the promoters were allowed some. If you see the earlier one, C and H was primarily, C is more where the promoter was in control of the company when the company was in an when the company went into the NPA status. That was relaxed, and this was a huge breather for the promoters as well. So presently, should there be more relaxations in 29 capital A, given the present COVID situation, is something probably the government should think next about, because as we have seen, other than the promoter, getting somebody on board is a challenge in MSME companies in a financially stressed situation. Yes, ma'am, the next slide, thanks. So the whole journey of an MSME, if I may say, in an IBC, from the context of a debtor, if you owe money to people, of course, if you're a creditor also, this will be applicable. You can look at from the other angle. There is a debt which leads you to eventually, taking more debt. You default to the bank, you become a defaulter. The promoter comes in the spotlight. Litigation starts. You try settlements don't work. An IRP is appointed. If the IRP, along with the IRP, automatically comes the table that you see with people sitting around. It's not your board of directors, but the committee of creditors, which takes decisions for your company. It calls for expression of interest, tries to basically get people to bail you out. As you see in the second line, the last image, somebody trying to bail out a company or a person in trouble. In this whole process itself, there is a lot of litigation that happens, which is conflict resolution is ideally best, conflict resolution, but it is the conflict and disputes that take place, which eventually land up in court, which is NCLTs. And you either have two options, or eventually leads into two directions. Either there's a resolution or liquidation. We have seen is more of liquidation so far. Yes, the word recovery also is there in that image consciously, because recovery has been there in IBC. One cannot shy away from that. Yes, ma'am, the next. So this is just a particular paragraph taken from a case which was Swiss Ribbons, called Swiss Ribbons. This is a case where the constitutional validity of this code itself, the law itself, was challenged. And if one later in your slides, when you see this paragraph, basically it says that how IBC has performed very well. There have been out of court settlements itself worth 1.2 lakh crores, and resolution plans at that point in time were of X amount, which is about 60,000 crores. And then of course later the SR Steel and Bhushan Steel, where we have thankfully a very enriching experience, and a person with a lot of rich experience, Vijay sir, is going to be speaking next, who was the RP as well, 35,000 crores. So yes, the law has been performing well in terms of recoveries for the banks as well. Yes, ma'am, the next slide. The gist of these case laws is, the first one is that the Supreme Court realized that a lot of companies are moving towards liquidation, and when you say RA means resolution applicant, which is a third party investor to come in and bid for a new bid for a company which is in a distressed situation. So excluding promoters was a problem, and therefore nobody else was coming forward. It was leading to liquidations, and therefore this relaxation was permitted. Then there are a couple of cases from for the next case of Bafna Pharmaceutical, where the NCLAT has given some relaxation and said the promoter need not compete with other resolution applicant. If the promoter is putting up a resolution plan, the promoter must be an MSME promoter, should have a MSME registration, certification, and some relaxation in the process is permitted, so on and so forth. Another point you need to know from the point of a company which again owes money is that merely because you're an MSME, it's not that the code will help you going once the suspension is taken off. That's the next case of Banariaman versus My Choice Knit company. It's like the Bangalore case, if my memory serves me right, went from Bangalore NCLT to NCLAT, where a company said that I'm an MSME, don't put me into insolvency, I'm a good running company. But then the court said no, there is no such specific exclusion for you. The next case of Pacific World Shipping again is that the gist of it is that if banks have to do some adjustments, if your creditors have to do some adjustment, as long as the company is going concern, they should not push the company simply into liquidation, which means the indication is more towards resolution than merely trying to recover money. Next slide, ma'am. These are two different categories of cases where MSMEs had been impacted, where in one case it said that it is for the promoter to obtain the MSME registration certificate, and this was a case where some challenges, the promoter did not give the certificate or the memorandum certificate well in time, or did not submit there. So it is not for the RP or the NCLT. AAA is adjudicating authority. It means it's not for the NCLT or the court or the RP to go ahead and get the registration certificate. It is for the promoter to provide. And the last one is, you cannot, this was a case, the St. John's freight systems, where the promoter managed to get an MSME registration certificate after the initiation of CIR process, which was not seen well by the courts. So yes, basically the sum and substance of these cases is that if you are an MSME and if you are a promoter who's willing to come up with a resolution plan and settle issues with the banks, it's possible. So there are also some plans which are mentioned below, which were initially passed by the respective benches. More so, we've taken a few from the Chennai bench. Of course, some did not. Eventually, after getting passed, the implementation wasn't there, and eventually there is a challenge which is still faced in the legal side. But yeah, if you're an MSME promoter, you can go ahead and present a plan for resolution or for the resolution of your own company's challenges. Yes, I think with that, ma'am, I think, ma'am, that's the last slide, if I remember. Yeah, so thanks so much. I think I have exceeded by 5 to 7 minutes. My apologies to the organizers for that. So I think with this, I'll halt here. I'm sure there'll be a lot of questions, and I'll be more than happy to do the Q&A, I think, after Mr. Vijay speaks. So I think over to the organizers. Thanks a lot, sir.
Thank you. That was a wonderful presentation. Although I think the members would have got the insight of what is the intent of the lawmakers and what is the COVID scenario going to be putting the MSME into a spot. And the presentation also has gone through the entire gambit of, what are the alternative courses available, like you were mentioning about the commercial cases, commercial suits, the summary suits, then you have the Samadhan. But the commercial suit, what could be the kind of cost implication in terms of court fee? Like, recovery suit, we have some 7.5% court fee. How does it work? It's a question to Anand.
Yes, sir. So basically, as far as the commercial suit is concerned, from the jurisdiction perspective, it is about anything above 3 lakhs, you can file a commercial suit. And the court fee is very similar to what you have in the civil suits, which is 3% if it is below a sum of rupees 1 crore in the lower jurisdiction, and it's above 1 crore, it's going to be 1%.
And the time frame, as you said, was 1 to 2 years is what it's contemplated, right?
It's doing definitely better than the conventional civil suits, sir, because every high court now has dedicated 2 or 3 benches called the commercial court benches, which only hear commercial suits, which also include arbitration related cases and all of that. But then at least you have a dedicated bench, so your chances of hearings have become relatively better off. So yes, optimistic 1 to 2 years, ground level 2 to 3 years, post COVID 2 to 4 years.
Okay, and the procedure code followed is a CPC, right? Not the CRPC.
It is a CPC. It's a CPC. They have brought in some elements of trying to cut it short, where try to make it, if it is possible, only documents, remove the trial angle where it is possible. So they have CPC is followed, but they're trying to reduce the CPC procedures.
So there are a lot of appreciations coming on in the chat box about your presentation. Anand, everybody is comfortable and very happy about your presentation. It has come out very crisp and clean, understandable, no much of law, no sections. So I think people are cherishing your way of presenting. And
Pleasure, sir.
Mr. Vijay Iyer, I have a question for you. So how are the MSMEs going to manage their working capital, or the vendors or suppliers, in this COVID scenario, and they don't have a recourse, and the IBC has closed down. So what is that they are going to look forward?
Thank you, sir.
Yes, Vijay.
Thank you, sir. So let me try and put a bit of perspective on this, sir. It's a very good question. So first of all,
Your audio has a problem, Vijay. I think you need to see.
I hope it's now better.
Yeah, it's better now.
Thank you. I just wanted to say, first of all, thank you very much for this opportunity to be part of this discussion. I think it's a very commendable action of the Bombay Chamber of Industry and Commerce to provide this opportunity for Anant and me, to provide a bit of legislative or legal and operational backdrop to IBC, while we have the master promoters of business and industry experts as participants. And I noted your visions. I did look at your website a couple of days ago, and your vision of trying to be the interface, a strong interface between government and enterprises, and also to be supporting and addressing the needs of participants and stakeholders through government interactions, policy advocacy, and thought leadership. So hopefully this webinar is a step in that direction. So thank you. I think Anand provided very good context of what has happened and what are the latest amendments, and he was quite politically correct not to take a view either to negative or to positive on that. I thought I should try and give some perspective as to why these amendments have been made and why this is the background we are in, so that once we have a bit of understanding, we may not agree with it, but that's the meaning. If we have a bit of meaning to what's happening, hopefully we'll find purpose. This COVID situation, as you put it very correctly, sir, is literally a black swan event. What is a black swan event? You don't see a black swan. You don't expect to see a black swan ever. You always see white swans. So a black swan event is an unpredictable event that comes up as a surprise, beyond your normal expectations. And the impact is that it has a major effect with very severe consequences. So we are facing a black swan event. This was supposed to be a pause. At that one earlier on, the expectation was this would go away soon. But now clearly, as even Anand said, now this is over 2 months or 3 months of lockdown. This is going to be prolonged. And therefore, there is financial distress across sectors, including the MSME sector, and this is now virtually a systemic crisis. When you have a systemic crisis, you require more radical actions. Because why? What happens in a systemic crisis when there is financial distress? There are 3 very severe negative outcomes which immediately come about. The first is there is a rise in NPA. Second, there will be an increase in insolvency filings. And third, there will be a surge of liquidations, unnecessary liquidations. So there will be a rise in NPA, there will be an increase in insolvency filings, and there will be a surge of unnecessary liquidations. And that is why the government was forced to take a couple of steps. If you see the actions of the government, there have been in parallel largely two paths. One has been the regulatory tolerance in terms of deferring various filings, compliances, tax compliances, regulatory compliances, deferring them, postponing them, some of them eliminating also. And second, the more substantial one is the various financial stimulus packages. This has been the direction of government's intervention. And what is the backdrop again? The World Bank issued a paper or a report in April 2020 on the implications of COVID on corporate and personal insolvency. And the World Bank recommended 3 fundamental steps, so as to prevent viable firms being prematurely pushed into insolvency. That is the first critical phase in this COVID situation. So what did the World Bank recommend? They recommended first an increase in the barrier to insolvency filings so that you suspend creditor rights and give debtors some breathing space. And therefore, this law of 6 months suspension. So they increased the barrier. One, it is now gone to 1 crore from 1 lakh. Big jump. The second was what the World Bank says was, apart from increasing the barrier, is suspend the director's duty to file for insolvency when the company is tottering or has liquidity problems, where Section 66 of the code requires and puts that obligation on the directors. And very important for promoter directors of MSMEs, because they are more closely associated to their companies. And therefore, the challenge will arise is, were the promoter directors of MSMEs obligated to take the company to insolvency resolution? Therefore, Section 66 was amended. And third was that whatever financial relief is being given, it is aligned to these debt repayment commitments. And therefore, we have these moratorium packages, we have the suspension, we have the increase in drawing power calculations, the additional financial reports support, so that there's no mismatch between an MSME's obligations and the financial packages. So in this sort of environment is why IBC came in. And why is this suspension therefore positive? Because it avoids viable firms going into liquidation that we have seen. Of course, it is lesser. There is one evil. The evil is what? That non-viable firms will continue. They are called zombie firms. For firms who just got enough money to continue, they'll be forced to continue. They will. The thing is, that is a lesser evil. The greater evil is viable firms being unnecessarily pushed into liquidation. Because if you have only a 1 lakh limit, there will be a surge of insolvency applications, surge of defaults, and unnecessarily firms which are facing a temporary liquidity problem will be forced into liquidation. And that's why IBC has been suspended. And if I come to your question, sir, that in this environment now, what should MSME companies do who are trying to get their monies, from companies which are in CRB, or so that we can pass through this COVID environment? Anant was very kind to refer. We have been successful in being the RP on Bhushan Steel. I was also the RP on Binani Cement, and a couple of others which were also successfully resolved. And the learning we have realized is that every CRP case is like a COVID situation. The company was virtually shut down. You revive it, try and protect everything you can. So from some of these learnings, sir, in what is it that MSMEs can do in this COVID time, given that IBC right now is suspended? How do I survive? The criticality of this environment is what? One has to respond with a bit of resilience, focus on recovery, so that you survive today to grow tomorrow. So the primary focus, of course, is liquidity management, working capital and liquidity management. Similarly to a CRP process, the same situation, I would suggest all the MSE promoters, MSME management would need to prioritize cash flows to protect liquidity. What we call is lights on action. Only those actions required to keep the lights on. So reassess the demand, non-core expenditure is deferred the capex, and then build better forecast of your cash flows first. Second, relook at your entire supply chain, both back and forward, in terms of your suppliers and your customers, and see where the leakages are so you can block some of them. So if you go into that aspect, you'll be into your receivables. So what do you do with your customers and receivables? With receivables, try and see if you're able to get digital collections. Enable your customers to pay you quicker. The banking arrangements for factoring, the TRED option which is available for MSME. I know it has not been a working option, but hopefully in a time like this, the government also sees and is compelled to make it work. But factoring through other channels. And also, one has to keep in mind, which I've seen even in the Binani Cement experience, is we must try and build loyal customers for the long run. So if you're able to work with your suppliers or work with your customers in a time like this, where there's a degree of fraternity and collaboration, you are building relationships for life. The strength of the Indian MSME sector has been that the promoters have built the business through personal relationships and through informal arrangements. And it is now these informal arrangements will be tested, and it is now the time to strengthen them. So focus on cash flows, focus on your receivables, focus on collections, and manage liquidity. And therefore, to bring the next point, is to increase cash flows, increase cash sales. Try and see if you're able to reduce the credit period so as to ensure that your clients and customers are able to pay quicker, or even suggest or even look at offering discounts so that cash comes in. Because today the criticality is maintaining liquidity. And from the supplier side is to renegotiate payment terms. See if you're able to defer or even get discounts for any payments made. Another element which is missed out, apart from receivables and payables and cash flow management, one thing we forget is tax. The tax situation today can also be used to manage your cash flows better. For example, the government reduced the interest for delayed payment. So honestly, that is one option. Second, you can try and see if you defer some of your tax payments. Third, relook at what your advanced tax calculations are. Don't do it simply as per the last year, because you could definitely you may be looking at a lower profitability. So obviously try and reduce the amount of advanced tax that you have to pay. And fourth, definitely push for your refunds. The government has made various policy announcements saying refunds are going to be given more expeditiously. Hopefully this is the time one can try and get that. And lastly, look at the various financing options which the government has announced in terms of lines of credit, in terms of the drawing power, and try and see if we can mobilize any kind of interim finance. So these are the various issues in terms of, or various steps one could suggest to build up the cash flows. Apart from cash flows and liquidity management, sir, the second element where MSMEs should definitely look at in this COVID situation is to look at the four fundamentals of your business, which is your labor, your production, your logistics, and your finance. These are your four main costs. If you can retune, defer, eliminate, or even reduce labor cost, production cost, logistics cost, finance cost. And one way is look at your fixed costs or look at your fixed term costs, which are considered to be fixed costs. See, that can be renegotiated. Everybody is renegotiating contracts today. If you have certain fixed term contract, your rental payments, other elements such as that, try and see if you can use that for variable element. Or the earlier on, businesses used to sell what was produced. In today's environment, one should be looking more to produce what you can sell. Inventory levels need to go down from weeks and weeks to days. Because if you're looking at liquidity management, you have to be very tight on your liquidity. That's the third element. And fourth and final is what even Anand said. Look at negotiations, look at conciliation, look at out-of-court settlements. I know we are all sitting in the comfort of our homes, and even today courts are operating online. In spite of that, I know the deepest of respects to both the eminent lawyers here. In-court settlement is always more challenging than out-of-court settlement. So I would encourage all of us to try and see if you're able to work out a consensus or a conciliation process outside courts. Everybody is in distress today. So if the brothers and sisters in India, among our MSC sector and across our industries, are able to help each other out today, build that brand loyalty for us, I'm sure we will survive tomorrow. So
that was good insight, and you would recommend the MSMEs to be cash rich and do a lot of cash sales, is what you're saying?
Yes, sir. And of course, if the MSME is doing very well, sir, in fact, this is a very good opportunity to actually buy. There are great opportunities being created today. You have some MSMEs who are not going to be able to survive. It is going to be survival of the fittest. So if you are able to deal with your situation better than some of your competitors and your peers, it may be a huge opportunity for you to capture market, even acquire some competitors, where they are struggling to cope, sir.
Okay, Anand, I have a question for you. This amendment and notification which has recently come, shutting the doors of the MSMEs under IBC, can it be constitutionally challenged? Is there any work for chambers like us to make a representation? It's just a thought provoking on behalf of the members. I'm asking, should it be a constitutionally valid, or it's how is it? Your views on that?
The suspension ordinance per se, sir.
Yes, yes.
Sir, we have our own. In fact, if I were to put it, I'll now from here on, I take the liberty to be a little, if I may say, candid. We ourselves are contemplating the possibility of constitutionally challenging some aspects of it, not the entire ordinance. Like, for example, what two things which are a concern? I mean, yes, to answer your question, in principle, yes, it can be done. And given the history of IBC, and probably Vijay sir also would have seen that any major ordinance that has come in IBC has typically got constitutionally challenged, including the last one of home buyers of 10% criteria, whether 10% of home buyers or 100 allottees should be able to go only. So typically there has been a history of challenging ordinances. This could be, but you'll have to have a sufficient ground. Like, for example, my grievance with this ordinance is, one, taking away section 10, that right, and two, why do you insert, there is an insertion of a very technical section where I'll put it in simple words, which is 66 subsection 3, where basically a promoter can do certain acts during this suspension period and they cannot be questioned later in a fraudulent transaction application 6 months or 1 year down the line when the suspension is lifted, and if that company goes into insolvency. So yes, it can be done. Chambers can, yes, definitely, you can have your internal deliberations and see what are the grounds, what are the concerns that MSMEs are having based on this, and it can be challenged. I think what probably the chamber can also look at, because there is another view floating, that what if their default is pre-COVID, which is pre-24/3, and if it is less than a crore, can you still go ahead? So which means if it's a pre-COVID default, if it's above 1 crore, there is no question, you obviously can go ahead. But if it is less than a crore, while I personally feel no, but there are some professionals who believe it can. So unless there is a clarification from the ministry or some judgment coming in, either we wait for that, or maybe that's something also which the chamber can consider getting a clarification from the government.
Yeah, maybe 50 lakhs could have been a better number than 1 crore is what everybody feels. For an MSME, even 5 lakhs, 10 lakhs is a big receivable.
Sir, if I two points to that, sir. Number one, you have put it very rightly. If you see the insolvency committee report before this changed and threshold, the discussion was somewhere around 25 lakhs. In fact, they had proposed, I think, 50 lakhs, but it was decided that it will be increased to 25 lakhs. Suddenly seeing this higher, because if you see the section 4, it says it has to be done up to 1 crore. So they have suddenly increased overnight. It seems to be more like a panic or a knee-jerk reaction that the government has increased the threshold to 1 crore. While I agree, we will all agree that there was a lot of misuse also. MSMEs have suffered because of that. People have filed for 5 lakhs, 8 lakhs, 7 lakhs, 10 lakhs. But at the same time, I think it's, while subjective, I think 25 to 50 lakhs would have been a more workable and reasonable. And in today's time, sir, I think even 10,000 rupees makes a difference at this point, because you're paying off one labor. You're paying off one labor.
Definitely, definitely. Well said, well said. There's a question by Mr. S.L. Roy. Is Mr. Roy around? I'm able to see that MSME registration is not happening in MSME portal with new definition, since it is accepting investment to equipment with a threshold of 10 crores. You are there, sir, Mr. Roy? What is your question, sir?
It is not happening actually with new definition because it is not accepting that is more than 10 crores. Now this is a definition said for medium industries, that is more than 10 crore investment also it will come under the purview of MSME. But it is not happening. In my question, I have put one more question there. I have mentioned that is when it will happen. This is in fact.
Oh, okay. I think we should take any response to that, Anand, Vijay, anybody?
Yes, I got a response that is it will happen, that is post 0107, it seems, that is.
See the notification, I have a copy of the notification. So the notification that I have, sir, here with me, it says that the notification will come into effect from 1st of July 2020. So there is a high possibility that they will start accepting this new threshold registrations post that date. So that's
Okay,
what the
okay.
notification says. Let's wait and we'll have to wait and see. Hopefully.
Okay, thank you, thank you. Let us wait. Thanks.
Of course, if I may add to that,
There's another question from our chairman, I think. Ganesh.
Om sir, I think Mr. Vijay was adding something to that aspect
Yeah,
as
yeah,
well. I
please,
think
please, please go ahead, Vijay.
thank you, sir. No, just to say, in a recent webinar, Mr.
I think you have to
Gautam,
come little closer to the mic. You have to come little closer to the mic.
is it better now, sir?
Yeah,
I
yeah.
hope it's. No, I just said in a recent webinar a couple of days ago, Mr. Gadkari, the minister in charge of MSMEs, had also said that they are actively looking at the portal for questions, and they are resolving all the questions we put up on the MSME portal. So if Mr. Roy still faces his challenge even after 1st July, he should push it on that portal, because the government today is far more responsive, shall I say, to any such queries which are in the public forum, sir.
Okay. And there's another question on the definition, MSME definition, whether amendments to the MSME definition is appropriate, the revision is beneficial, or it would be detrimental, as there will whole lot of new entrants would come under the purview of the definition. Yeah, that is expected, but your views, Anant or Vijay, basically on the MSME increase of the threshold.
Yeah, I will request, or I will request Vijay sir to first put his views, and then I do have some views, but I will.
Well, I think this was a gray area that trading houses were not considered to be either manufacturing or services. So till the government comes up with a clarification now that they have aggregated the two limits and they have made a new definition for the MSME sector, we should explicitly say which kind of sectors or industries which are covered or not covered, particularly in this kind of grayness where there is. Whether you can argue that a trading house is a service company or not.
Om sir, my view on this, just to supplement, or rather, I think from the angle of whether it is beneficial or detrimental, this whole revised. See, the objective is to obviously cover more MSMEs, because the packages are being given from under the rather under the overall umbrella of MSMEs. See, when you bring in two twin conditions of both investment and turnover. See, earlier investment was good enough, so obviously you could have people more MSMEs in the fray. Now with investment and a turnover less than 2, like for example, there is a turnover element brought in 5 crore, 50 crore, 250 crores respectively for micro, small and medium, should be less than that. So according to me, you're bringing in another criteria which will possibly mean lesser people would be able to get this registration. So in my personal view, as far as the reclassification is concerned, might be detrimental.
Another interesting question. When do you expect that the financial pact declared would be implemented and the benefits would reach MSME? I think this question is regarding the recent announcements, right? That 300 crores or whatever it is. Mr. Ganesh? Yeah, there's a question. Financial pact, I think it is more to do with the bankers, and I believe the RBI has laid down some guidelines for the distribution of these kind of loans, and these loans are not free loans. Actually, it is having interest, and the interest should be around 20% is what I heard. The bankers are putting their guidelines in their websites. I think it's better to look at the websites of respective bank, especially the SBI has put these guidelines as to how these packs are going to be distributed to various MSME. So then the next question I would like to ask is about the fast track process. Now that the fast track is there, how does the MSME benefit out of it? Is there any scope for it?
Sir, I'll on the fast track thing, subject to Vijay sir's view. First thing is before I move on to fast track, I'll just quote. I did see a clipping of Mr. Rajiv Bajaj, who normally speaks his mind out as far as this whole package of MSMEs is concerned. He had used a very interesting term that why does this government always come up with this ghuma fira ke economics? Why is it so complicated? For example, his counterpart in Germany, a German company, they, if I'm not one of the European countries, they've just paid the manufacturing companies 85% of the wages that the manufacturing company has paid to its workers, while in the COVID period they could not take use of those workers. So if you paid a lakh of rupees, 85,000 is reimbursed by the government. That itself is a huge support. But as see, I'm not I'm not an expert on the MSME package per se, but in the process of thanks to the little bit of reading that I was doing, it seems to be reasonably, I would say, fairly complicated, because there are multiple types of loan, multiple parameters, criteria. While it says a lot of it is going to be the 3 crore loans will come without any guarantees and so on and so forth. Again, implementation we'll have to wait and see. That was with respect to, I think, one of the questions that come in. With respect to fast track insolvency, sir, the code does provide for a fast track insolvency, and strictly as per the ordinance, the suspension is only for section 7, 9, and 10, and the fast track insolvency is in the later sections of 55 or something of that nature. So as far as the MSME is concerned, strictly speaking, the regulations are also in place. The adjudicating authority rules can be used. Fast track insolvencies can be initiated against a company. But again, two things. One, you still have to ensure that you are not hit by the threshold issue if you are going ahead and filing against another company. And secondly, of course, it's supposed to be done within 90 days, extendable within 45 days, and all of that is there. The challenge I see there is, sir, only 3 categories of companies can use fast track. The companies which have a turnover of less than 2 crore or a paid up capital of less than 50 lakhs. The second category is an unlisted company with the, I think, preceding year they should not have had total assets of less than, or rather it should not have exceeded 1 crore. And then the startups, as per the definition of government. So very limited companies can undergo the resolution or are eligible for resolution on the fast track. So now from an MSME, you want to go behind somebody, you will have to go and check whether that person is capable or falling under uh, fast track mechanism or not. This is a bit of a gray area again, because not when we looked into the cases across pan India, except for one case where there is a reference that Bombay bench had converted a normal CIRP into a fast track one because the company was a smaller company, and this matter went to NCLAT, and they said that no, you cannot on your own decide if it's a person has filed under section 9, let it be a section 9 application. We don't see fast track being very effective or being implementable at the moment, sir. But strictly legally speaking, there is no suspension on that as well.
Yeah, I would
Any
agree.
add-on?
Yeah, I think I would agree with what Ananta said. Yes, it is legally still possible, but it's not a practical solution at this moment in time. I think there are two things required fundamentally to make the fast track process actually fast track. One is they have to raise the eligibility limit, right? Right now it is for very small companies only. So unless they raise the limit, it is not going to be impacting many companies. And second, the biggest challenge even Ananta talked about earlier, unless we have some separate benches or tribunals to deal with this fast track CIRPs, this is again going to get bogged down in the litigation we are seeing in the other IBC cases. So that otherwise, this is not going to be fast track, sir. It is going to be the slow track only.
Okay. There's another question which has come in. Are the trading houses come under definition of MSME as a service sector? I think the answer is no. I think service sectors, they're asking about traders. Do they fall under the definition of MSME? Anand?
So the answer would be no, sir, because we are just looking at the MSME Act as well, just to make sure that it is to a large extent covering the point. MSME only covers the manufacturing and service sector, which we obviously know. Trading companies are not yet covered, is what my understanding is. And traders are now obviously, given the importance and the packages and all the stimulus which is being provided, a lot of traders want to take the benefit of MSME, but at this point in time, traders would not be eligible for MSME categorization as of now, sir, unless there is some unless there's a unless there is some change in the law at present.
Anant, why the complication turns up is when this notification came for increasing the limits, the various exclusions which the government had done earlier from the MSE sector has not been repeated here. So there is a grayness. The government has to issue a notification clearly saying whether these sectors are again excluded or not excluded.
Jain, trading houses, what do you mean, Mr. Piyush Jain? You are a trader? Mr. Piyush, you're there? Fine, no problem. There's another question. Is there any possibility of MSME getting priority as operational creditor? Maybe at par with unsecured financial creditors? It's a real good ask, actually.
I have a very strong answer to that, but I'll again let, if Vijay maybe, then I will probably put in my thought.
I think it's a very good point. In fact, if one looks at what are the fundamental changes you want in the IBC today to support MSME, and this could be something even BCIC could take it up as a forum. One is obviously relooking at this waterfall mechanism, so-called waterfall mechanism in Section 53. Why? If workmen can be paid for 24 months and if employees can be paid for 12 months, why can't MSME vendors be paid for at least 6 months? The MSMED Act talks about 90 days that any customer of an MSME supplier has to pay within 90 days. So suppose you extend that to at least 6 months dues, that could be brought in. That's one of the changes clearly one can bring in. Second, of course, has to be the Section 248, the special resolution framework required for MSME has to be notified. There's been talk by many people saying it is on the anvil, it will come out quickly. Hopefully, if everybody pushes, it comes out quicker than earlier and then later. The third is there is a bit of grayness in the law because now, while you increase the limit from 1 lakh to 1 crore, the limit has not been increased for personal insolvency, where you're a personal guarantor. Where Mr. Anant said, right, that if you're a promoter director of an MSME company, you could be brought into the net as a personal guarantor. We saw the latest case a couple of days ago, where Mr. Anil Ambani is also being brought to the tribunal by SBI as a personal guarantor. Now, what is the limit for a personal guarantor? Is it 1 lakh? Or is it 1 crore? So suppose you are a personal guarantor of more than 1 lakh but less than 1 crore. Can you be brought in? So maybe that bit of harmony is required so that this bit of variance is removed. And then finally, it has to be that, that 12A, where there is possibility for a promoter to settle the dues. And we've seen that the MSME sector is fundamentally promoter driven, where the informal relationships and the arrangements which the promoter has built over decades of time are the critical elements, the intangible elements. So is it not possible for reducing that percentage required from the 90% to say a more liberal 66 or 70% under 12A, where a promoter could try and pull out this company again from IBC? These are some of the points, and particularly I like the point on this MSME being brought into priority of settlement. I do agree with that. Anand?
Yes, sir. Just to supplement what Mr. Vijay has said, yes, by and large, it will require, at the moment, there is the law doesn't support, so there will be there will be a requirement of an amendment to the law. And given the intent of the MSMED Act, as Sir had, Mr. Vijay very rightly put it, that within 90 days you resolve it, or within 45 days make the payment. So there should be some consideration when they're looking at such a huge package for the MSME, some reconsideration as far as IBC context is concerned. But unfortunately, I mean, I won't say, but it has been so that so far all the resolution plans that we see on the ground, or most of them on the ground, as well as Supreme Court has time and again said that the financial creditor gets a much higher precedence over the operation creditor. This was discussed in depth in Swiss Ribbons. Again, it was discussed in the SR Steel case, where it said that this financial creditor has an intelligible differentia, and the operation creditor knows what exposure it is taking, and therefore at the moment it's right at the end of the waterfall mechanism, and it's a huge haircut that they are the ones who actually take the haircut. We speak about the banks taking the haircut, subject to correction. My at least from the experience that we have seen, mostly operation creditors take a 90% plus or 85% plus haircut. You maximum at best get 15 to 20 paisa to a rupee, that too if you're lucky. Otherwise it could be even less, because all that the obligation is the liquidation value. So definitely if an MSME can be brought up the ladder, it will be of great help to the sector.
Okay, we are coming to the close end. Quickly, I will just take up a few questions which has come up. You can make the answers very short. There is a question by Gopal Hosur asking whether the associations which has GST can be categorized under the purview of MSME. These are all gymnasium, swimming pools, whether they can be classified under MSME or can be converted under MSME is the question they are asking. It is more pertinent to MSME, but it's associations.
Doesn't look like, sir. Doesn't look to me, unless of course if it can be, this is something which will have to be, we'll have to wait and see. As of now, doesn't look like. If you can establish that this gymnasium and a swimming pool is providing a service to the end user, it will get a bit technical. That angle will have to be looked into, but at the moment doesn't look like.
So it's a moot point actually.
True.
Okay, and there is a question about Samadhan. IBC or Samadhan, which is a better mechanism to collect the debt, is the question. I think Mr. Narasimha has asked this question. Again, Samadhan is more of arbitration proceedings and negotiation. So what are your views on?
You're putting me in a very awkward spot too in that question, sir, because it says which is a better way to recover my money. See, the NCLAT has time and again, no, the NCLAT has time and again said that the IBC is not a resolution, is not a recovery mechanism, but on ground reality, as I said, things are different. So Samadhan scheme is time bound. Yes, you're supposed to complete the whole process within 90 days, but it takes its own time. The challenge with the Samadhan scheme is, again, of course, not that it is not successful. If you see on their portal, a lot of data and statistics is there. And I always believe that measurement drives behavior. If you are measuring something, if something is available in numbers and statistics, you can sense how the whole pattern is going. So it is doing fine, but it doesn't put a sword on the head of the company or the promoter. So if today also, if you were to go versus Samadhan scheme, you get, because even the problem is you get the award there. Ultimately, with that award, what do? Enforceability becomes the same thing. You go to civil suits, or you bring that award and probably try filing an IBC petition. So straight away, might as well IBC petition may be a faster mechanism, if at all, on a case-to-case basis.
Mr. Sagar, Suresh Sagar from Kasia, you're there? Mr. Suresh Sagar, I saw your question actually. Please inform us how MSME can approach IBC and get this benefit. I'm failing to understand what is your question actually. Mr. Sagar? He's not there. His question is very simple. Please inform us how MSME can approach IBC and get this benefit. It's quite vague.
If I can probably try to have a quick answer to that. If you are falling under a situation where it doesn't matter if you're MSME, non-MSME, assuming also you're MSME, if your default is above 1 crore of rupees and it is prior to 24th of March 2020, you're the guy who owes you money and the amount is above 1 crore, you can go to IBC. IBC doors are open, NCLT doors are open. But if it is in the COVID period, that is after 25th of March, you cannot approach the NCLT irrespective of what the amount is, whether it is 1 crore more or more than 1 crore or less. So yes, you can approach. And of all the cases, like even the cases that we have in pipeline, the discussions that we have with our clients, see, today most of the defaults that people have approached us or have approached their respective councils is pre-COVID defaults. So in a way, no one's really going to go behind you, or the less chances of post-COVID default cases coming up that would have even come up. Anyway, it's suspended now. So in short, sir, MSME, yes, you can go if it is a pre-COVID default and the default amount is above 1 crore. But the ifs and buts, the thumb rules I've told you, think, no, you check whether the guy is really, if you go to IBC, is he going to pay you that amount or all of that? Those all the parameters the creditor will have to factor in.
There's one last question I would like to take. Mr. Chandresh Desai, you're there? Yeah, his question is, can ICICI Bank block funds of a running MSME company which has never defaulted in interest payments only because they stood as a guarantor to a defaulting company, that too during this COVID lockdown period where paying salaries itself is a big task for MSME? I think Vijay, you should be able to address this.
This is a complicated question, sir. Well, I suppose the ICICI Bank is going to say that if you're a guarantor, your liability runs in parallel to the named borrower. And therefore, if they are a default company, they're a default company. As we said, so in today's COVID times, every person, including banks, are holding on to liquidity. So while they may be having a strict technical interpretation saying that they can withhold, one has to go into that particular agreement that you have as a defaulter and whether that agreement in fact impinges on your other credit facilities with ICICI Bank. I hope that is useful, sir.
Yeah, I think we are coming to the close, close of the session. It's already past 1 o'clock, and we have our chairman, Mr. Ganesh here. He was also from Deloitte. Chairman, Mr. Ganesh, you're there? Hello. You have to unmute yourself. Nick, we are not able to hear. I think he has a problem. So the entire session was very interactive, and with all the questions, we've been able to sort of most of the questions which are put in the chat box. I think if the members are not having any other questions, we can go to the next part of the program, that is the vote of thanks. If Ganesh is able to talk, I think he can do the vote of thanks. Mr. Ganesh.
So can I ask you a question?
Yeah, please, Piyush Jain.
Yeah. I missed. I had some network issues. Just wanted to know whether a trading house comes under the purview of a service in case of an MSME definition.
Actually, we dealt it. I think according to us, it may not come under the purview of MSME because trading houses are not. What do you trade actually, Mr. Piyush?
We import chemicals which are used for manufacturing soap and detergents.
Okay. Anant, you have any answer for them? They are into chemical materials.
No, I think irrespective. I think multiple. I'll just switch off probably because there is some disturbance on the audio. Irrespective of the industry in which they are or the products. Piyush, sorry, I don't know if you're getting me. I hope. Irrespective of the type of material, I think as of now, this is. I think Vijay also has addressed this very well. That as of now, it doesn't look to be that it is permitted to be coming under the service definition. But at the same time, there were some exclusions in the prior regime which have not been mentioned in this regime. So probably there will be some clarification going forward, and this issue is a burning issue not just with you, across a lot of trading houses, a lot of the entire trade community, the traders community has this question. So I think sooner or later there will be a clarification on this. As of now, you can either look at it at a negative or a gray area.
Okay. In the earlier definition of MSME, in the exclusions was service was trading exempted or?
I think Vijay, you had mentioned something of some exclusions. To the best of my knowledge, traders were not permitted to be in the MSME category. Only it was manufacturing or services. But
yes, in fact, earlier there was this notification which had come out and that said that certain activities were not covered. That included retail trade, included wholesale trade, forest, fishing. There were certain activities which are clearly said were not covered. The grayness, I understand your point, sir, is that with this new notification, the new limits have come, these carve-outs have been reproduced. Whether you're covered or not covered, I think the government will have to clarify through another notification or clarification.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Ganesh, sir, Ganesh, you're able to talk now? No, we are not able to listen. We are not able to hear you. I think you have to unmute. Rupa, all are unmute, right?
They can unmute, sir.
Yeah, I don't know. His volume, there is a problem. Okay, then. So thanks all the members who have participated in this webinar on IBC amendments and changes during the recent COVID time and an MSME perspective. And we are thankful to the speakers for the day, Mr. Anand Nagatia and Vijay Iyer, for having come all the way to this session and sharing all their experiences which they have gained during their practice and services. So thank you very much, Mr. Vijay and Anand. We look forward in future webinars also we will associate. And I think there are some moot points which we have to, as a chamber, take it forward, like, trading houses and then the operational, the water flow. There are certain points which I think we can represent on being in the capacity of chambers on behalf of MSME. Basically, people are also looking at the threshold, so which has been a very hot topic now. And we thank our sponsor for the program, the Byju's, Mr. P.V. Rao, for having sponsored this session. So thank you very much, all of you, and thanks, Mr. Ganesh, for being, a passive hearing. And we will again assemble on a different topic on various other matters concerned with COVID and ongoing issues. Thank you very much. Thank you, Vijay and Anand, once again for sharing all your thought process and views. And we will definitely circulate the PPT which you have forwarded to the members, so that all the members are benefited. And if there is any requirement, we will again bounce back to you for again another webinar. Thank you very much. Thank you very much on behalf of BCIC. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you all members.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. Thanks for having us. It's a pleasure, absolutely an honor and a pleasure. Thank you so much. Thanks, Vijay. It was great. I think at this point, this is the best we can in terms of technology to come together and.
Yeah,
Exactly. This technology from me from Bombay and Anand from Chennai, I'm able to connect with all of you all in Bangalore. And of course, it is a very interactive session. I thank everybody for that. Thank you, sir. I wish everybody stay safe.
Is there anybody who has any questions? Still, the speakers are available. Quickly, you can have a rapid fire. We have another 20 people to go. Any questions? They're all very hard to be found. Okay, sir. I think we have covered almost all. See you all. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, sir.
Yeah. Rupa, you
Thank
can.
you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you.